Nonetheless, some of the points you made earlier are kind of, these are global phenomena, these issues of the need of managers to understand the new language of young people. I mean, after all, if Facebook's growing at the pace it is in every country in which you operate, your employees are going to be empowered in this new manner, and that empowerment is going to carry over into the workplace, whether the workplace would like it or not, right?
I was just going to say, in terms of geographic trends, LinkedIn's fastest growing markets in the world right now are Brazil, China, and India. Some of those growth rates are starting to accelerate. And as we approach critical mass in markets like China, I think we're going to see further growth. And so I think it's very difficult to overgeneralize on a global basis in terms of some of these trends. I think what is very clear is that the tools now exist such that switching jobs, if you are a skilled professional, switching jobs is going to be easier than it's been in the past.
Well, you're the ultimate tool in that respect.
Well, and regardless of whether it's LinkedIn or other tools, this ability on networks to present your identity, to essentially build your brand, for that profile to be search engine optimized and show up at the top of the results when a search is done on Google or other major search engines, that's an incredibly powerful dynamic that you can carve out a piece of digital real estate and essentially present your experiences, your skills, and perhaps most importantly, your ambitions. That is how increasingly opportunities will accrue to individuals. And that's only one component of it. The second component is building your network. And what historically has been a very costly thing, maintaining relationships, now can be done at the click of an accept to an invitation on a professional network or a social network. And then lastly is the facility with which we now share information and knowledge. And really equipping people with the things they need to know to be more successful. And the byproduct of this, to some extent, relates very closely to what we've been discussing, which is I think companies will increasingly become self-policing. If executive management is not doing right by their employees, because these tools now exist, employees will find it easier to be more mobile within the workplace. And so as a result, I think it's going to force executive management to raise their game.
Yeah. I think I have two problems.
Real quick, could somebody come up here and fix the screen on my iPad, because I can't get the tweets? Thank you.
I have two problems with what we're discussing. The first problem is that we're discussing it out of fear, whereas I would like to discuss it out of one opportunity. Number two is we're assuming that people in different countries behave differently. Let me try and give my point of view on that. First is I think 50% of the world population is less than 25 years old. And the growth of Facebook, LinkedIn, or any of these tools is indicating the adoption across the world is to be the same, if not faster, in the emerging world. And therefore, when these 50% of the people come into the company, they are identical, which is our experience. The second issue is these 50% of the population have what I call communities of interest. So they collaborate on skateboards with something, on surfing with somebody else, on physics with somebody else, and on jobs with somebody else. So they are not in a hierarchy pyramid as it used to exist in India and China. Now they are collaborative, and you can see that in your houses with your sons and daughters, that they are collaborating with different sources of people and getting influenced by them. And therefore, when they come into the organization, they are not pro-hierarchy. They are anti-hierarchy because they believe that they should be doing 8 or 9 things simultaneously. As soon as they come into the organization, we draw this bell curve for them. Top 5% will get promoted and bottom 5% will get fired. And there is an immediate shock which happens. And therefore, it is not their fault that they can't draw and answer the question he's asking. But I think the question is that the organization structure, which is a pyramid structure, is a suffocating structure for 50% of the world population. And therefore, unless the organization pyramid is destroyed and it becomes more sphere-like and more diffused on its lines, and that's what we did in HCL, I think it will not adopt this population coming in. And therefore, to try and say that either the people coming into our world today from emerging markets or wherever they are less innovative, I would say that our structures do not get the best innovation out of them. And therefore, the challenge and the opportunity for future is if you can get your organization structures right, if you can get the transparency right, if you can get the enthuse, enable, encourage right, if you can stand accountable to them as you are accountable to your son and daughter at home to keep the family intact, I think the opportunity to use that strategy to drive growth and drive profit has never been better. And I think that's the greatest opportunity we face today.
I love hearing this guy talk. I want to hear some people in the audience, hands, mics can go to them. I have a question here on Twitter, but if anybody has a question, comment, please ask it. Question is really for how do executives, lawyers, this is from Ted Shelton, and human resources give up control and learn to love transparency. Managers are scared, it says. So all three of you, I'd like to quickly talk about how do managers change themselves for this environment?
So I think it's a great question, and I just want to quickly butt in and then I'll hand over. I think if the manager is convinced that giving up control will make his promotion go faster, he will be more successful, he will earn more, he will give up control. I think by treating employees as an HR problem and seeking a change in the manager's attitude, we're making a mistake. If you convince the manager, as we did in HCL, 3,500 of them, that this is the way to grow, they will give up control.
Yeah, just a quick point, and I delve into this gingerly because I'm not an expert. However, doesn't mean I don't have an opinion. Adult learning, I mean, there's a lot of literature about adult learning, and I wonder, I mean, this is pretty radical stuff, you know. If you've been raised on a template of how you manage and how you influence, to unlearn it when you're in your 30s and 40s, it's extraordinarily difficult. So I think that, unfortunately, it means that we're going to have to promote younger people much faster, and find a how shall I put it, humane way of dealing with a generation that cannot deal with this new reality.
I think it's important to draw a key distinction between leadership and management. You were talking about managing through fear. For me, I think leadership is defined really as the ability to inspire others to achieve a shared objective. And a good leader, as we all know, culture gets set at the top. And so if the right leader is at the top of the organization, they're going to set a tone where it's inspiration and not fear that creates the best results. And managers who are managing through fear won't be in those roles for very long.
Yeah.
I just wanted to mention, Mark Benioff was originally going to be on the panel, and he actually had to cancel for personal reasons. But he has this thing he does at Salesforce, which is one of the reasons I wanted him to be on it. She calls it V2 MOM, vision, values, methods, obstacles, and metrics. And every, I don't know, is it 6 months or 3 months? For every interval, every manager, including himself, has to write all those things, write it out, explain to all of their direct reports what their position is on all that, vision, values, methods, obstacles, and metrics. And then they all have to do it and share it with their people. And it goes all the way down the workforce. And it has been extraordinarily effective. Salesforce has grown amazingly well, and it's been incredibly well managed. It's something that isn't often enough commented upon about that company, because we always hear sales, software is dead and all that stuff. Back here, Fred, identify yourself.
Hey, Fred Vogelstein, Wired Magazine. I think transparency is a critical component, and I think obviously Google and Facebook are pretty good examples of what happens when you allow that to run. But how do you explain Apple and, for that matter, Oracle, which seem to be counterexamples to that?
No, that's a great question.
Philosophy.
Jeff, I want you to tackle that one.
Sure. I think cult of personality goes a long way. So, in an organization like Apple, where to a large extent Steve's vision is the organization's greatest strength, that may offset some of the benefits of transparency. And cult of personality is a very, very powerful thing. It can be an extraordinary motivator if you have the right personality with the right team focused on the right set of problems. Oracle with Larry would strike me as being somewhat similar. Very strong personality, very strong vision, and the rest of the organization follows suit. So I would suggest, though, over the long haul, transparency will win out, which could probably be measured in terms of retention. And that's really about, I think, workplace satisfaction. But to your point, Fred, it's hard to argue with the returns that Apple and Oracle have generated over the last decade.
And I was just going to add another distinction that I think needs to be made is, this Citibank, my company, been around for a while, employees have been around for a while, and you got a legacy. And it's one thing to talk about a startup that grows very quickly, or a company the demographics are, on average, I don't know how old the employees are in Vineet's company, but I suspect it's 20-something. And it's quite another thing to talk about a company that's been doing business for a long time and is going through that transformation. So I think, you know, the transparency evolution in these two different, and obviously the segmentation is much more complex than just two, is going to evolve differently in each of these, I would argue.
Also, my observation as somebody who's covered tech a long time is, you know, you have the Führer at Apple who has decided by fiat, we will be the BMW, right? And they have 10 or 15 million users of the iPhone. Meanwhile, Google, which is a much flatter organization, is selling 200,000 new Android phones a day. To me, that is an interesting marker of where the world is changing, and I'm not sure that we are necessarily going to see this, you know, iPhone-ology be such a, you know, ultimate success story indefinitely with, I mean, I think Android is the biggest development in technology right now, but that's another discussion. Back there we have somebody, and then we'll come up here.
Hi, Andy McAfee, MIT. If you all are being so radically transparent internally about really important parts of your organization, plans, strategies, initiatives, what's working and what isn't, aren't you also basically telling your competitors these things? And if you are you worried about that?
So that's something which we struggled a lot with. And you know, when I was writing this Employee First, Customer Second book, also I struggled with the fact that all what a competitive differentiator will be out for competitors to copy and become as successful as you. I think the critical question is the fact that if people do not know honestly where you are, and they are the people who are going to solve your problems, how do they start solving the problem? When you are a large corporation, and you know, as I know, that you're not the most competent person to solve all the problems in the company. I don't even think I can solve one. And if others are going to solve it, isn't it best to make sure that everybody is aware of the problem? Everybody is aware of point A. If you draw a line from point A to point B, try and draw in without knowing where the point A is. You know where you want to go, but you don't know where to start drawing the line from. And therefore, yes, there is a risk of the competition knowing, but in my 5 years, a lot of news has come out of HCL, a lot of leakage has happened, but the amount we have gained from transparency far outweighs anything which had, you know, negative.
That's the ultimate example because he's the ultimately transparent company. Go.
Hi,